Hey dancers, it's Kirsten. Welcome back to the Confident Dancer YouTube channel or podcast if you're listening there. Today I'm really excited to bring to you part one of two interviews that I did with my new friend Anabel Katsnelson, who is a corps de ballet dancer with American Ballet Theatre. She and I got to connect at the Dance Mastery Summit, which was an online summit. I'll include information about that down below so you can watch the replays of tons of different seminars and talks that experts from all over the world in the dance industry gave. And she and I were on a roundtable discussion together about how much time off dancers really need from like a dancer's perspective, the mindset perspective, and then also from the perspective of a physical therapist. So when we were connecting, I just thought she had so many great insights to share. And I thought it would be so great to do two videos. This first one is about her experience as a professional dancer with American Ballet Theatre. I wanted to give you guys an inside look into what it's actually like from her perspective to be in such a big company and what it took her to get to that place of being at ABT. I thought it would just be really interesting since so many dancers really idealize dancing for such a big glamorous company like that. And so yeah, I asked her about her journey, and also she shared a lot of wisdom about surprising skill sets that a lot of dancers don't know they need to dance at such a high level like that. No, it's not all about technique. And then also she shared about just her own development of her perspective as an artist and what she values now in her career compared to what she prioritized and thought about early on in her career. So you can read more about her bio and her background in the description of this video or podcast. But yeah, without further ado, definitely enjoy this video and make sure you're subscribed to the channel or podcast so that you don't miss our next video, which we're going to be talking about her injury recovery experience and what she learned through the process of going through two pretty significant recoveries. So you definitely won't want to miss that. Injuries are something, sadly, we all tend to experience at one point. So that's a great video coming at you as well. So anyway, enjoy this one and let us know what you think in the comments. Thanks. Enjoy. Anyway, Annabelle, thanks so much for being here. I'm really excited for our conversation.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, this will be really good. We're going to talk about your experience dancing for American Ballet Theatre and some of your background as well. I'm just excited to give dancers, like I shared with you, just more of an inside view of what is it really like to dance in such a big company. So I'd love to start with just an overview of your background as a dancer and how you got to ABT.
Yeah, so I started dancing when I was like 3 or 4 or something, but I definitely wasn't serious about it and didn't think I was going to be a professional or didn't even want to go down that road until I was probably like 13. And I did like public high school and everything, and I was just going to dance like at night. And I went to this small studio, and everyone was really passionate about ballet. And like we would all go to see ABT together, like on the weekends or whenever we had off from school or anything. And I just remember that really like sparked my joy for like ballet. And I was kind of like, maybe I could do this. Like, let's see. So I started doing some competitions. I did YGP, and I feel like I got a lot of good feedback and criticism, and I was terrible the first time I did it. I like had really just started point when I was like 12. Um, and I felt like my training wasn't really good like prior to coming to this school. So it was definitely like a big learning curve for me. But I feel like, at YGP, the judges saw a lot of potential in me, and my teacher saw potential in me. So I was kind of like, let's give it a go. And when I was 16, I went to Houston Ballet. I got a scholarship from YGP. So I'm like very grateful to them for helping me with that. And so I was in the school at Houston Ballet for a year. And then I got bumped up to Houston Ballet II. And then from there, I didn't get into the main company. So I was auditioning around. And at that point, I was 17, almost 18. Or no, yes, I was 18, almost 19, I think. And I went to ABT Studio Company. And then after a couple months, I got hired into the main company. So it all happened really quickly.
Nice.
I was like there in New York. And I was really happy because I'm from New York. So I grew up watching ABT, like I said, and I don't know, my family's close by. So it all worked out very nicely. And I was just so grateful. Studio company was also so much fun. I feel like I learned a lot. It was just so condensed for me because I only had a couple months there. And then I was an apprentice. So being an apprentice with the main company was like so different from being in studio company and Houston Ballet II. Like when you're just doing all these ballets, you're doing all these pas de deux, you're dancing so much, and then to being an apprentice where you need kind of different skills. And I feel like that was it was really interesting just to like note that transition. And like we were still dancing a lot. Like we use all the core members at ABT, especially the women for like the big ballets. Like I remember my first ballet was, well, the Nutcracker and then Swan Lake. And I just remember like watching the video, making sure I knew what spot I was, where I go. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so cute that I like had to watch the video. Like it is so ingrained in my body now. I know all the spots, all the sides, like, but yeah, so it was very exciting. Oh, I also did Suzanne Farrell's her company for like
Hmm.
one season of Balanchine Swan Lake at the Kennedy Center, which was also a really cool learning experience. That was when I was 17, like while I was at Houston
Nice.
Ballet. And I feel like that really taught me how to like do core work as well. So I'm grateful for that opportunity.
Wow, what a fast track journey from going on point at 12 years
It
old
really,
to like next, next, next. That's
it all just
amazing.
happened.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Wow.
was very grateful too that I could graduate high school a year early. Like my public high school was very good because I had enough
Mhm.
credits to graduate. The only thing was the PE credit. They wanted me to do like double gym my junior year, which is like my last year. And I was like, oh my God, I'm already dancing so much. I definitely don't need to do like an extra gym class. But so yeah, that was my track. I never did homeschool.
Wow.
I just graduated early and decided to give it a go. And I figured if it didn't work out for me, I could always just apply to colleges and, do something else. But I'm very grateful. I know how hard it is to be in this field, like, and to just get a job. I've definitely experienced that. Like with auditioning, it's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very lucky, and I've been at ABT for 7 years now, so it's been like my home. Yeah.
That's beautiful. How amazing. I'd love to hear more about how many seasons you did company auditions, and how many you did. I mean, we don't have to get super precise, but I'd love to hear about your company audition experience.
Yeah, I did just that 1 year. So when I found out I wasn't getting hired into the company at Houston Ballet, they had some auditions come through in Houston. I did a couple, like I like flew out some places to audition. So it was really just one season that I auditioned for. And then I auditioned for ABT, like main company, but I kind of knew I was a bit young still. And so they were like, why don't you come to the studio company first? And I'm really glad that I did because I know sometimes it's so hard. You get stuck in that studio company, like
Hmm.
bouncing from one studio company to the other. And, it's really hard to find that place where you can get into the main company, where there's
Yeah.
space for you, where you feel like you can grow. Um, it really is like it has to fit, right? Like you can't just go anywhere. And I'm just really grateful that I was like mature enough to be like, okay, I need this time in the studio company, even though I've already done a studio company year. Like I can learn from this, and I don't know, it was nice to have that before joining the company as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's definitely something to be said for, to put it simply, kind of like standing up for your worth sometimes and pushing to say, you know what, I do have this experience. I am going to wait it out for a corps ballet contract. But I've noticed a lot of dancers who have had some level of longevity in their careers, which is such a relative term because like longevity in ballet is quite different
Not
in
very
how that's
long.
defined compared to other fields. But people who have had, I'll say, personally satisfying careers, from what it sounds like,
Yeah.
a lot of them have had a season where they accepted a position that seemed horizontal, like, oh, I'm just going to another studio company, or they maybe even accepted some sort of demotion in the label, but it got their foot in the door to be able to open them up to another opportunity, and it ended up paying off. So that's really cool to
I
hear.
really, I really think that's the most important thing. Like, even if it feels like it's a horizontal, or even like, if you're going, if you're making a demotion sort of thing, I really do think it's important to find a place where you see a future, and, where they see a future for you as well. Um, it is kind of letting go of your ego in that moment and just kind of being like, okay, this is like, it kind of sucks sometimes to spend another year, but sometimes it's faster than that. And it's always good to be in the place where you want to be, and you never know what might like pop
Yeah.
up. So for me, like, company member who got promoted, or an apprentice who got promoted early, so then they had a spot. So I was kind of in the right place at the right time. And
Nice.
I mean, so much of it is the time, right? Like, and
True.
you can be so super talented, but a lot of it is about timing.
Yeah, yeah, it is true, which is the element that we can't necessarily control. And so I think, from what I've heard so far, something that I think is really exemplary about your attitude is this: let's just see, let's just go for it.
Yeah.
And even the
Pretty worth
attitude
it
you
to
have
try.
of, like, you know what, I'm going to go for it. And if it doesn't work out, I could apply to universities. That, for some people, they might hear that and hear maybe like detachment, like, oh, do you not care a whole lot? But what I hear, my mindset coach brain working, I think that's a healthy level of perspective and detachment and curiosity. Curiosity to say, you know what, let's just go try this. Let's go gain some exposure. Let's put ourselves out there. Let's do this. That is something that really opens doors for people. And combining that with a healthy level of detachment to a super specific outcome, like, it has to be this and it has to be now. I see that adding a lot of pressure and stress that unnecessarily burdens dancers on their journey, when sometimes really it's just a matter of time for them. So I'd love to hear it.
I mean,
Oh,
well,
go ahead. Yeah.
sorry.
No,
To
go
be
ahead.
fair, I was like a little crazy. I definitely wanted to be, I was
Yeah.
very gung ho about it once I was on that track. But I think it was more of like my family, they were kind of like, that was kind of the deal. Like, if it wasn't working out after a couple of years, then like you would go to school,
Yeah.
or like you would go to school while doing whatever. So once I was at Houston Ballet II, I was doing online school just to like, I mean, just because you never know what happens in the career, right? Like, you can be
True.
injured tomorrow and have to like sidetrack. So I think I did that more for my own peace of mind as well. But I definitely was like, I was fully locked in. Like, I wanted that
Yeah.
so badly. And I think that's probably what got me there too. Like, a lot
Yeah.
of it was timing, luck, um, of course. But yeah, I was very, and I wanted to be a ballet
Yeah.
dancer. I wanted to get into a company, and I was ready to pretty much go anywhere,
Yeah.
And I just turned out the way it did.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I definitely could imagine, while I was even saying that there was that, like, no, I do want this.
Yeah.
But still an openness of mind and an inspired backup plan, as my friend Jess from The Whole Dancer talks about. I love how she labels it inspired backup plan. Like, you have other things that you can do, and it can kind of relieve a little bit of that fear as we live in this very uncertain space, because it requires a lot of resilience to
Yeah.
uncertainty, doesn't it? To
Well,
be in this field.
there's actually a book. Have you heard of the book Choke? It's by Sean Bellick.
Yes, I started to read it and
I
I
have
didn't
it right
finish
here.
it.
But it's really interesting because one of her key points, she came and talked at ABT. She like did a short talk with us with the dancers. And one of her points that I thought was really interesting was that we actually choke up less on stage, like we perform better, like without making mistakes. When we think of something after the show that's not related to dance, like think like, oh, I'm gonna go home and what am I gonna make for dinner? Or like, what am I going to do afterwards? And so I always think of that like in the grand scheme of my life too. Like, it's always nice to be like, oh, this isn't the end all be all. Like, if I mess up this one thing, there's life afterwards, you know? And like
Totally.
sometimes it makes you dance better because you're just more free and you're less scared of messing up one step in your
Yeah,
life. So
absolutely. Amen to that. Whatever you need to do to let go of a little bit of that pressure, it can be super helpful.
a lot of pressure.
Yeah, yeah. So you had mentioned um, just that the different phases in your journey from, let's say, studio company to apprentice required a different skill set. So,
Oh,
what are some of the shifts in skill set, or we could also say focus, like what you prioritized in the different phases of your journey? Let's say from the Houston Ballet training days to studio company to apprentice to company. Like, what was that progression like?
yeah. Well, I feel like at Houston Ballet, I felt like I was a little behind because that was my first time, well, one, living alone and like living away from my family. And two, I just felt like it was the first time I had really seen dancers from like all over the world in one place. And it was a huge turning point for me. It was just like I could kind of choose how I wanted to dance. Whereas like when I was growing up in my small studio, I only saw the same people every day and kind of got like this one sort of training. And in Houston Ballet, I felt like just got so many different teachers. I got to see so many different dancers. I got to really watch the company like as much as I wanted, which was I felt like I was kind of maturing in my dancing, and definitely getting stronger from like dancing all day, every day. And then, yeah, in the second company there, it was more of like doing pas de deux and learning choreography. Like a lot of choreographers came in. It was more contemporary work, which was really fun and exciting. And then in studio company, it was also a lot of pas de deux. Um, it was interesting seeing the shift, like how the Houston Ballet dancers might be different from ABT dancers. And yeah, and then once I joined the company in ABT, a lot of it was core work. Just learning how to stay in line, or for me, I was always front of the line, which was maybe a little more stressful my first year because you
Ooh.
have to know what you're doing at all times. You have to know the right counts. But so yeah, definitely the first year or two was like learning all the general rep that we do and being a good core member, learning how to stand, learning how to, you know, not stand too early, you know, so that people can follow you or so that you follow people. There's a lot in core work. There's like that's a whole like, you know, art form in and of itself. And then I felt like after a couple years, it was like, how do I keep this fresh? You know, and how do I stand out in the core as well and make it my own, like make the work that I'm doing something that's individual to me while also still obviously fitting in with the core. And I was lucky enough to get some like opportunities as well, like after being in the company for about a year. And so, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've had like a range of experiences, which has been really cool. Now I feel like, yeah, I'm still kind of figuring out, I feel like we are continuously figuring out like how we want to dance, right? And that keeps changing. And like, you know, I love that part of it because there's no like destination. You're just always working on yourself. And I feel like I'm at a point where I'm trusted in the corps de ballet and it's nice to, I don't know, just enjoy the work that you're doing and not be stressed about it anymore. It's definitely like, you know, second nature at this point. And just learn how to, yeah, just like keeping it fresh, I think is what I'm working on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense because any of my friends who, even the friends I made in Oklahoma City Ballet who are still dancing there, I got to catch up with them last year. And it seems like there's a beauty to settling into where you're at and to just feeling that relief of like, okay, I know I'm trusted here. I know
Yeah.
I've proved myself to a certain extent. Um, but there's also a monotony to like, okay, another season. What's
Totally.
gonna change? Let's keep it fresh. Let's keep growing. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I
And I
think.
feel like one thing that also helps with that is like learning, going deeper into like maybe the acting roles or like even with Giselle, like, okay, where are we? We're in Germany. What's the time period? What are we doing? And I don't know, sometimes like there's a lot of like acting on stage and, you know, to keep it fresh, it's nice to like really think about that and not just kind of be like, okay, I'm on stage and I have to look like I'm giggling or something. It's like really like getting into the acting part of it too. And that's something that I've been really enjoying lately too, just creating the scene. I know like sometimes it's not all glamorous being in the core, but I think it can be if you make it.
Amen to that. I always love the motto, it is what you make it, for
Yeah,
anything, for
totally.
anything. Because, of course, you could just wait to be told what to improve and form all of your intentions for your classwork and everything based off of feedback you get. But I feel like dancers grow stale and bored and dissatisfied if you're not also adding in some of your own intentionality for asking questions like, how do I want to dance, what's interesting to me, in what ways do I want to grow. And of course we're always getting corrections, so that's going to come into play as well, but it's nice to not be so reactionary, I think, in your
Totally.
approach.
I mean, also that's one thing that has changed from like joining a company. I realized like you actually don't get a lot of feedback in the company
Mm-hmm.
unless something's wrong. So like for me, I feel like growing up, I was always like, I need to be corrected constantly because that's kind of how like my schooling was like in my small school that I grew up in. I just got like so much attention, so many corrections. And then once I was in the company, I was like, am I doing something wrong? Like no one's talking to me, no one's giving me feedback, no one's telling me I did a good job, right? And now I'm like, oh yeah, they're not going to tell you if you did a good job. They're only going to tell you if you did a bad job. Or not a bad job, but if something, they see
Yeah.
something that needs to be changed. And so that was really a hard transition for me, just to like learn how to correct myself. And one thing that really helped me was like taking videos of like if I was struggling with something, just like taking a video of it, watching it, trying to be not, judgmental of myself. And or like having a trusted friend or someone or teacher who you will ask, a coach or anything, to help you with something. So that's really helped me. But that was like a huge change during the company. I was like, wow, I really need to learn how to self correct. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And isn't it so fascinating to see how there can be such a shift in mentality that happens in us over the years as we get older, as we're trusted with more responsibility. I've seen that our training kind of develops by default this mindset in us generally as dancers where it's like we're getting a lot of attention, a lot of corrections, we're getting praise, and sometimes there's so much feedback we're getting from the outside that there's not even space for you to think, what do I want to change, how do I want to dance. So we become, again, like I said earlier, very reactionary and kind of waiting for that feedback to even feel like we have permission to celebrate what's going well or to think what we're going to think or to have our own opinion about our own dancing. And could that be different? Maybe. But that also just kind of is how it is. And then the more you get into professional life, it seems the more space you have to be like, well, no one's
you
talking to
have
me,
to,
so.
yeah, you have to trust yourself. I think that's what I learned. You have to trust that your dancing is good. And if something doesn't go wrong, then it's on you to fix it, or you ask for help, right? And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Hmm.
But for me, it's really just being confident, like not needing that validation all the time,
Yeah.
from the front of the room. And that has been the hardest thing, I think, honestly, especially in
Mm.
a big company, because, obviously they're going to correct the soloists and principals like first. That's the most important thing. Um, just from like a business standpoint too. And I guess not taking that in a bad way. Like it can mean a lot to you, but that's okay. That's okay. You don't need that all the time.
Yeah. What has helped you to develop that trust in your ability and that confidence? Because I hear you that is one of the hardest things, and it's why I do what I do as a coach. So I'd love to hear how you started to build that in yourself.
Honestly, it's still working on it. Over time, for sure. I think just maturing as a dancer and like seeing different things, and like my taste is also changing. I think that I don't know, before I was like, if I don't do four pirouettes, like it's not good. And now I'm like, I think I focus on other things, maybe more artistic things. And I don't know, for me, really having coaches helps a lot, like outside of the normal hours, or maybe just asking like a teacher after class to look at something. And also doing like outside gigs has really helped me because I feel like it's allowed me to like really dance and be an individual, and like I get to do pas and solos or whatever I want to do really. And I think that really helps give me confidence in my day-to-day corps de ballet work as well, because I know I have the tools to do that, you know, and I know
Yes.
that I can dance like that. And it's okay that maybe I'm not a soloist or a principal in this company right now, but I know that I'm a valuable asset in another way. And I also know that I can do that work. And so
Yeah.
I think that's really what has helped me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm hearing two really critical aspects of the confidence building process that you just embodied in your own story. One, acceptance of what you're not, at
Yeah.
least right now.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to be a principal to be worth something or to have value or to be doing something well that you can appreciate about yourself.
Yeah.
And another thing is evidence. I talk a lot about when I coach dancers or when I speak to groups, the importance of building and collecting evidence to validate empowering beliefs about yourself, whether that is I have something to offer or I can trust myself. I can handle challenges. You can think those positive thoughts all day long, but until you actually ask questions like, what is an example in my past where I did do that? Or just looking and reflecting at your own dancing now, what are some things I like about my own dancing? Some of that reflection helps to solidify the evidence that you have something to offer, but then also going out and creating evidence by doing gigs where you
Yeah.
get to
Not
see and
yourself.
have undeniable proof I clearly have something to offer or they wouldn't have hired me.
Right. Right.
That's such a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think the
so,
more like diverse things you do too, like it's fulfilling, but it also does make you feel like, okay, I can do this. And I think the more maybe outside work you do as well, it gives you, I don't know, for me at least, it gives me hope that like, you know, and I do get opportunities in the company. I really do. And to me, I feel like as long as I'm doing the things that I want to do and dancing the roles that I like, I'm very happy.
yeah.
Um, like obviously it's always great to be promoted, right? But in a big company like ABT, it's very few people get promoted. It's a huge company. Um, and I don't know, I think sometimes you have to be realistic about where you are at and content with where you're at as well. And I feel like that's something that I've been struggling with in the past. And I think now I'm in the place where I'm like, as long as I'm dancing what I want to dance, and I'm getting those opportunities and I'm feeling fulfilled in my work, then I'm happy. So
Yes.
yeah,
That's
that
so
was a
good.
side note, but yeah.
Oh, it's great though, because that part of it also embodies the importance of deciding what your values are. What are
Yeah.
you going to prioritize? What is important to you? And when you're clear on what you value personally, not only do you get to know yourself better and live more authentically to yourself, but you also have a much better shot at actually feeling content because you've decided on your terms for what do I personally need to feel okay about where I'm at. And if
Yeah,
we just let these external things define that, like, oh, I'll be happy when I'm a soloist,
right.
you're always going to be chasing.
That's the thing. Like in ballet, you're always chasing, right? You're always like reaching for that perfection. And yeah, I've just realized kind of over time that like the more I dance, the happier I am. And as long as I'm in a place where, you know, it feels like a good environment and I can dance a lot and tour, I'm very happy. So
Amazing. Okay, I have a couple of quick, like little rapid fire questions for you that are definitely inspired by the little teenage ballerina inside of me. Okay, number one, what is it like to dance with people like Isabella Boylston and all the superstars? I'm sure you get that a lot, but tell me, what's it like?
awesome. I mean, they're so inspirational and it's always fun like when we're doing like a full run through of a ballet and they just like crush it, but it's really cool to see like that they get a little nervous too before, you know, especially before like I think run throughs in the studios are honestly more scary sometimes than like being on stage. And they say that too, like Isabella has said that. And I don't know, it's just cool seeing that they're normal people and they're like super nice and just like really down to earth. And I think you can tell when they're dancing a lot of the time, you know, when they're great people. And that makes me really happy. It's really nice to like be inspired by my colleagues. I think that's
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things about being at AET is that
Hmm.
there's so many incredible dancers and incredible people. And yeah, it's a pleasure to watch them dance. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good to hear. I love it. Next question is, what are some of the stresses or challenges of dancing in such a big company, and how do you cope with that?
Yeah, I think definitely one of the stresses sometimes is like feeling like you don't have enough rehearsal for a role that's coming up because I mean we do have like limited space and time, and sometimes you're not the priority, right? But and I think for some dancers like more rehearsal, some like less. I like a lot. I like to like just like work on roles a lot, and so I think sometimes for me that's hard because there's obviously limited resources and time and space, but yeah, that's I think one way I've combated that is just like working on my own with coaches that are willing to work with me on like a Monday or staying after or using a lunch break or something to work on, anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's one thing. Another might just be like feeling like you're noticed and valued. And I think a lot of that I've realized comes from within. But I don't know. I think that it's something that definitely changes the longer you've been in the company. They value the seniority. They value, I don't know, when you're committed to the company, and I think that that shows. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. What are some of your pieces of advice for younger dancers? Okay, personally, I gotta interject. I usually kind of hate this question because it's so general,
Yeah.
but maybe to narrow it down, um, what are some things you think dancers should know who are the kind of dancers who are like, I want to dance for ABT. It's the big classical company route for me or nothing. What should they
Right.
know?
Um, that sometimes we don't dance a lot, and sometimes we do have a lot of layoffs throughout the year, which is tough. I think that's another thing that I think is really tough, like just to stay in shape throughout the year. And sometimes you're doing the same ballet over and over. Like we did a lot of Giselle's last year. And so it's like sometimes it's not that glamorous. Sometimes you're just villager number 4 for like 10 shows and it's nothing more than that. And I think like the first couple years are definitely slower. Just getting your footing and like learning choreography, but a lot of the apprentices or first year core sometimes like don't get to dance a lot. And it really just depends on who they need and stuff. So, but I think that's pretty general throughout like most companies. I think, especially with like small rep stuff, a lot of the newer dancers sometimes are like just understudies. Uh, so yeah, just not to get discouraged by that because there's a lot of dancing in the studio company,
Yeah.
and you're doing your principal roles, but like that doesn't always happen. Sometimes it does, but that doesn't always happen when you join the company. Might feel like a step down or like you're not doing anything, but just yeah, to hang in there and stay in shape and do what you want, do what you feel like you need to do, like in class or whatever to feel like you're dancing, and then just be patient. Yeah.
Yes. Ah, patience. It's
Yes.
key.
Really
I
hard
hate it, but
because
it's
we all are like
key.
perfectionists, type A. We feel like we need to do everything all the time. Um,
Seriously.
yeah, I think patience is really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Last question I have for you before we film our second video. That's for everyone watching. We're doing a video on your injury recovery advice and experience because you got some wisdom on that. But last quick question. What are some core differences you see in dancers who sink in the company versus those who swim over time?
Yeah. Um, I mean, actually, I think the patience thing goes really well here. I think just um, being patient, but also not letting yourself get sad about where you're at, like still having that hope and still like really working hard. I think that the people who sink are the ones who, I don't know, maybe stop coming to classes or, Don't show up to rehearsals, or I mean, it seems very obvious, but I think that sometimes when you get comfortable in a company, that's very different from being patient. Like too comfortable, like when you feel like, okay, I'm here, like I just need to show up to work, and that's fine. Sometimes we have ballets where you can just show up to work, right? And like crank it out and leave. But I think generally, like the people who do really well are the ones who put in the extra work and, really try and ask for help, and are confident in themselves. I think being confident is a huge one too. Just, knowing your
Yes.
worth and like showing that, and not questioning yourself too much. Asking for help and questioning yourself are very different too. I
So
think,
true.
yeah.
Mm.
So, yeah, being confident, working hard, and yeah, being patient but not lazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's that confidence, right? The reason why I focus on it so much is because that was a core factor I witnessed in people who sink versus swim. And of course, there are multiple factors to that: timing, um,
Agreed.
talent,
Yeah.
injuries.
Oh my
That one took me out. Okay.
I mean, it took me like half a year to be confident after my injury.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
and like, I was dancing fine, but it was just like it was the mental aspect of it,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. I think that's, yeah, it's really important. Yeah.
Yes.
But it can be hard, like first joining a company because I don't know, you want to be humble as well. You obviously don't want to
Mm-hmm.
overstep any boundaries. So you have to have this inner confidence, but also not seem too cocky or not steal
Oh,
anyone's
yeah.
thought and not push to the front. So there's like, it's really hard. It's a delicate balance, right? Of like being respectful and understanding that there's a hierarchy in ballet and, especially at a bigger company like ABT, like it's, I feel like, yeah, you treat people, senior dancers maybe should have like their first pick of bar spot or whatever. But then also knowing your worth, and knowing that you have earned your place in the company as well, and you
Yeah.
just have to be there. Um,
Absolutely. There is quite a difference between arrogance and that real inner confidence that you talked about, knowing your value, your worth, what you bring to the table. When you are secure in that, you don't have to be the one who's like, look at me. Sometimes those are the most insecure people,
yeah,
I think. The ones who
that's
are like
true.
really projecting stuff.
Very true. Yeah, but I mean, you also don't want to get lost, like
Yeah.
it. I think it is important to go to the front sometimes just to be seen,
Yeah.
especially when there's like a lot of people in the class, and there's a choreographer watching or something. Like it is good to like put yourself out there too.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can't hide. So yeah, it's a balance.
Right. There's nuance to this stuff, which is why I make these videos. It's why I coach dancers, because when I was young, I'm wondering if you experienced the same, where I was aware of the generic advice, like, you need to be confident in yourself. I was like, awesome. How do I
How do
do
I do that?
that? That sounds great. Give me some of that. But
Right.
like,
What's
how?
the secret sauce?
Or yeah, you have to put yourself out there, but no, also no one wants to be that dancer that everyone hates because they're like, oh my gosh, who does she think she is?
Right.
So I was always so fascinated in the fine lines. How, where's the truth in that
Yeah.
neat little middle? How does that work? How do we do it? So anyway, I'm super grateful for your wisdom that you shared today. I'm sure a lot of dancers have been really like plugged in and excited to hear what you have to share. So thank you. Do you have any last remarks or just a big thanks everybody for watching?
Yeah. Thanks for watching. I feel like one more thing that I wanted to add was that one thing that ABT does that I honestly recommend and I think would be great is like we have a mentor program for the apprentices that are coming in. So like a more senior core member will be a mentor to one of the apprentices coming in. And I feel like that has really helped, I think, a lot of dancers. Like I'm a mentor right now, but I think it's nice just to have like someone who you can talk to or, ask questions about. There's so much that you learn like going into a company, like overtime and I don't know, just how do you fill out certain forms and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think if you can find a mentor or just, ask someone for help, that's always like helpful. But
Yes. Great advice. Well, thank you, Annabelle. We will, I know we've been chatting. It's always longer than we think.
Oh
There's
yeah.
so much good stuff, but I'm excited to get into your injury recovery wisdom and your experience there, because I know from my experience, when I was going through a really difficult injury, I was just looking at dancers on Instagram, actually from ABT, who were doing these crazy workouts and like jumping off Bosu balls and whatever. And I was like, how did am I just uniquely messed up? Like, how do people get through this? And so I know you're going to break it down and make it real.
Those are I like can't even stand on a Bosu ball, and I know that's
Crazy.
probably not good, but like I should be able to stand on a Bosu ball, but like I can't. So it's not just you.
Wow, that ministers to my soul. Thank you. Well, we should get on to part 2, but thank you so much for sharing about your journey and about your experience with ABT, and to everyone watching or listening on my podcast. I hope you really enjoyed it. So thanks, Anabel, and bye everyone.